starting with VR training can feel challenging and daunting. Maybe you've seen great examples and you would like to implement similar immersive learning experiences into your organization. Maybe you've heard employees talking about learning with VR, and you're asking, will it replace classroom or even e-learning? So you would like to start using VR, but you really don't know where. That's what we're going to discuss today in the webinar. We will guide you in all phases of VR training creation and implementation. And we're going to show you that it's not that difficult to start. Hi, I'm Thijs de Vries, CEO at Warp VR, and together with Danny and Anna, we will discuss practical and actionable strategies and enrich you with inspiring examples.
Hi, I'm Danny de Bruin, Chief Experience Officer at Warp VR.
And I'm Anna Ilievska, Customer Success Manager at Warp VR.
Great, Danny and Anna. Great to do this together today. And to discuss that starting with VR training doesn't need to be that complex or expensive as well. Combined, the two of you have worked for many enterprise companies and helped create hundreds of training scenarios maybe by now. Let's discuss today and talk about the 4 phases in scenario creation and implementation, which are starting, writing, filming, but also the rollout. And let's discuss tips and tricks and examples from our clients so we can help everybody who's watching in today's webinar with that first step of scenario creation.
Good idea.
Let's start.
All right, so let's discuss that first step, which is actually starting with VR training. So let's say one of the viewers currently now online is interested in starting with VR training. They haven't done so yet. They have all different forms of training already in their organization. But their initial thought, it's complex. Maybe it's even expensive. What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say that maybe they should start small and have also others involved, like your colleagues. Usually our clients start with a simple, small scenario of maybe like 10 to 15 scenes. They distribute different roles and obligations among each team member so that it's easier to do this, everyone together. And then they use this scenario as a pilot with a test group of people, let's say around 100 employees, to get basically the feeling of how this whole experience goes, who should be involved and how, what they should pay attention to, maybe the reactions of the pilot group, and what they can learn from all of this.
I see. Would there be an example of a client of Warp Studio that has started small and maybe is now growing, bigger, more scenarios?
Yeah, sure. You can see one of our clients is Erste Bank. It's the biggest bank in Austria, and they start very small scenario, a topic that can be trained also in a small group, just to start, also to learn what is needed to create such a scenario, but also what's needed for the rollout through the company. And with every new scenario they made, they thought really, well, okay, what kind of topic is now the right next step? Also to make others enthusiastic about this new way of learning, this new way of training.
So which topic was this? What first topic did they start with?
The very first scenario was about a bank robbery. It was a small scenario, but not a very easy scenario to start. We helped them with this first scenario, writing and filming it.
Okay, so why was it not, kind of an easy scenario to start with? Why is it not the best scenario to start with? And what is then?
Yeah, so it's also about it has a lot of interactions and a lot of consequences in it, and that's just a kind of a thought flow you need to learn needs to involve. So with doing, you learn and you get better in it. I think a more easy scenario or topic to start with is a let's say guided tour, an onboarding scenario, those types of topics.
Okay. Can you give me an example of such a scenario? Kind of what could that be, a guided tour?
So let's say you are a new employee and you want to learn more about the building you need to go to work for your first day. So then you can explore already the building, you know where to go, and maybe you feel more at home on your first day. You feel more confident going to your first working day. Others can be maybe you need to work on an oil platform or on a ship, and it's expensive to get you there. So it has value that you can start right away, and you don't need to discover first this new environment. So therefore, again, you can explore that environment before you are there through VR.
We also
Yeah.
have some examples in the education industry, maybe like a tour of the school grounds and introduction to professors from different curriculums that the school, maybe, or the university uses as an information scenario on their open days for potential students. So that's also kind of a guided tour, more information based scenario.
I see. So those type of scenarios are easier to create, let's say, so therefore easier to start with.
Yeah. We tended to call a information based scenario. It's we also have story based scenario, and the difference is with an information based scenario, it's more about gathering information somewhere. Where with the story based scenario, it's you have more interactions with elements or people in that environment, and you are part of a story, and your decisions could have different outcomes. And when you have a guided tour, there's not really many mistakes you can make there, right? So it's more about learning that new environment.
I see. Okay, so now I think we're already briefly, let's say, discussing indeed the creation. So let's switch to that topic about scenario writing. I think we kind of make clear what could be interesting topics to start with. So we discussed that the guided tour could be an interesting topic to start with, more easy to create, but also applicable, I think, to a large part of the workforce or students in when it's around education. So let's say me as a instructional designer at a company, together with my team, we decided to start using VR for learning. We decided upon a topic. What would be the next step? So in terms of scenario creation, what's that first step when we want to start working with VR? Anna?
It may seem maybe overwhelming, like you mentioned, especially when creating your very first scenario, which is completely normal because you're not alone there. We've seen that most start thinking about all at once the content, the choices, the rollout, the filming, and it may easily become a small mess. So I think the most simple advice that we can give is to just start writing, because if you don't have the story behind the topic you've chosen, who you're creating this scenario for and why, then you won't have anything to film or roll out later. And for this purpose, we created actually a worksheet that should help clients maybe create the story outline for their chosen topic by taking into consideration every element that's important in storytelling.
I see. So the worksheet can help clients actually with that initial step, maybe even before kind of thinking about the actual VR training, it would be a good first step into kind of that creation process.
Yeah, you want to make the scenario as close to real life as possible, and you want to keep it engaging for the trainees until the end to make them feel like they're responsible for whatever happens. So it's very important to include all of these elements that the worksheet basically guides you through. So you have the goal of the training, who the player of the scenario is, are other characters involved, and what is their purpose. Um, what is the incident maybe that puts the story in motion, the challenges that the character may be facing, and the choices that they will make together with the outcomes due to those choices.
Yeah, I see. I see. So, Danny, do we have any examples or reactions, feedback from clients that have been using the worksheet for scenario writing?
Yeah, so we have clients that use this worksheet themselves, and we also have clients that we work together with writing scenarios, and we use this worksheet together. So we get a lot of feedback, and I think that the most important part is that it gives them structure. It gives them the questions they really need in this process. It's just kind of guidance through this first step on writing a scenario that really helps them. So they really like. Also, if you go to our website to download this worksheet, we also have written down how you can use it in a workshop form, and that's the way we do it ourselves in a workshop with multiple people. Um, so
I
really,
think I think we even did or I think I know, we did a webinar previously about the worksheet. So, uh, anybody watching this webinar, please take a look at one of our previous webinars where we are discussing the worksheet and kind of step by step how it works. So we've been, discussing the worksheet, kind of the topics, that are, let's say, the best topics to start with, if you want to start with VR training. Do we have any other tips and tricks which we can share with our viewers on writing scenario?
yeah. So I think we have some great how-to guides in our help center. And I think we have some great blog posts also about story-based scenarios and how to write them, some tips and tricks. The very first webinar in this series is about storytelling. So I think it was with Dio, who is a scenario writer. Also have some great tips and tricks. And we recently launched a inspiration page with where you can find all kinds of inspiration cards. So it's about topics and different elements in that scenario, just to get you inspired of different topics and elements of a story that you can use yourself. And we add new ones every month.
Great. I can totally imagine that, that's going to help, anybody who starts with VR training to get started. Anna, is there anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think what Danny mentioned briefly previously with the worksheet is that it can be used by a group of people, like a teamwork, in order to write a scenario. And I think that's a very good tip when it comes to writing. I think more minds maybe offer different perspectives. So, for example, if I may be scared of a certain situation, that same situation may be completely normal to Danny. So it's always better, maybe, and smarter in a way to co create with both your colleagues and include experts on the topic rather than writing the story maybe by yourself. And the worksheet, I think, can help there as well. Actually, that's the way that we created it, like Danny mentioned.
Yeah, I can totally see that. So whenever you have, multiple people, a full team involved in scenario writing, I mean, everybody is also kind of part of that creation process and can, let's say, carry that VR training, in the organization. All right, perfect. So I think we kind of covered the topic of writing. So again, a recap, we know topics where people can start with. We've discussed the worksheet, so we know how to, get actually started once you have that topic, and we shared a lot of tips and tricks. I think a lot of the questions, people might have might also be on filming, We've got writing, obviously, as kind of the first phase in the creation process. But let's say you've written a scenario, it's non-linear, you've got one starting point, multiple endpoints, you need to film. That's difficult, right? Isn't it? Or can anybody do it?
It used to be quite difficult. I think when I started, what is it, almost 6, 7 years ago with filming, I thought it was pretty difficult. But now with all new technologies, it became very easy to film yourself. So I truly believe that everyone is capable of filming a 360 filming 360 video and using it for a VR scenario. Just has to do with all the technology and innovations that are now in place.
Is that also what we're getting back from clients? Is that the feedback that they're sharing with us? That's easy to do.
Yeah, actually, clients have shared with us that it's very easy to do, especially with cameras nowadays, as Danny mentioned, regardless if they try it by themselves first or maybe go through a training with us. So, for example, Shell Brunei had their staff trained by us through online workshops. And now they already have a couple of scenarios that they created completely by themselves. So it's basically just place the camera on a tripod and hit the record button.
It's as easy as that.
Yes.
So this is cameras that we're talking about. So what type of cameras? Can we mention a few cameras which are kind of easy to operate and also kind of which other hardware is required in order to get into the process of filming?
Yeah, so you have a company Insta360 that has lots of 360 cameras out there now, and creating new ones. I almost say every year. So now I think the X3 is a nice one of them. It's very easy to use, and also they have the 1R 1-inch edition. It's also a very good one. We use the Insta360 Pro 2. Other brands you can look into are Kondao. It's a company that creates, for instance, the Q-Cam. That's easy to use. GoPro also released some cameras, but we hope to see a new one coming pretty soon to get on the level of the other companies right now. But next to the camera, what's very important, so of course you need the camera, maybe a tripod that can go on eye level, because you want to give the, as we call trainee, the people playing these VR scenarios, the feeling that they are there. So they experience it in a way they would be there, so on eye level. Audio is also very important. So I would say the next part I would invest in is maybe a good wireless microphone system. You have some Rode has some very good ones that has one receiver and 2 transmitters with microphones built in them. So I think that's those are very good. DJI also have a very good wireless system, easy to use, easy to operate, and these can be plugged in either straight into the camera. So it's also easy to edit these videos. And if you have a little bit more experience with editing software like Premiere Pro from Adobe, then you could also record it separately and then do it yourself in the post-production.
I see. Now I'm thinking it might be good to add a couple of links to the resource that we have, mentioning these cameras and hardware. In the show notes, we'll put it on there underneath in the webinar, so if people can easily find it. Maybe also just to touch upon kind of software you already mentioned, software you can use. So what if you don't have experience with, those type of software, and you actually just want to straight, use the 360 cameras that you just described and connect them actually to the scenario you created in the previous phase? Like, how can you just share a little bit on that process? How does that work all the way from filming to, let's say, finished training scenario?
Yeah, sure. So with all these cameras that I mentioned, they are it includes software that you need to stitch the videos. So most cameras that I mentioned have 2 lenses, one lens on either side to film a full 360 view. And then in some process outside of the camera, sometimes it can be done on mobile phones or on a laptop or PC. You stitch those two different images into one 360 degree video. So this comes with the camera. It's also very easy to use. Lots of guidance on the website of these manufacturers. And then when you have that video, you could upload it straight to Warp Studio, our platform, because you can trim the videos in Warp Studio, and you can also make sure where the people start looking when they get into a scene with the video. So we looked at it, we call it initial look direction. So because it's a 360 view, what's the front and the back of this view? And you can decide that also in Warp Studio. So there's no need to have a editing software or experience with that. Also, when you record this external microphone straight into the camera, and we have some blog posts about this as well, there's no need for editing software. If you have experience, then you get a little bit more freedom as well if you record it separately, the audio, and using editing software, because you can dial in the audio level of different microphones and the microphone of the camera itself, for instance. But there's no need.
I see. So let's say, people out there still have a few questions about this. Obviously, we have, these resources we just mentioned. But, they want to have a little bit more assistance, maybe with, maybe also writing or filming. What are the ways we are currently helping clients? And maybe that opens up a little bit the possibilities for anybody watching this webinar.
We do have workshops for the ones who would like to learn maybe in detail every step of the way in scenario creation. So like you mentioned, including writing, filming, and the rollout itself. So some of our clients, as I mentioned before, like Shell Brunei, did that with their staff. And as I mentioned, they already created a couple of scenarios by themselves. So basically in these workshops, we try to pass our full knowledge on scenario creation based on, let's say, what we know as experts in this field, but also what we've learned from many different use cases so far. We work closely with the client. We talk about writing tips and tricks, filming basics, post-production, and we also give maybe some homeworks that are later reviewed with us. So we can learn together from each other and the challenges while doing the homework. So by the end of these sessions, we make sure that the client is ready to conquer the VR training world.
I see. We will make sure we'll prep them fully so they can actually start building and rolling out. So I think that's kind of the bridge directly to the last phase, maybe.
I would like to add one more thing on how easy it is. So also, if you don't know where to start filming because you have this non-linear scenario, we have a great feature that's the export feature. So you can export a scenario and you will get a kind of shot list. So you know exactly what to film, and you can, there are little check boxes on it, so you can mark it which scenes you already filmed. And also this really helps to make sure you have everything during recording before you go back into Warp Studio. And then also we have some features to really test these scenarios. So when you're done filming, you could test it either in the web player that we just launched, so in your web browser, to play a VR scenario to see how it looks. But if you use your mobile phone or a tablet or a VR headset, there are also extra controls to really test this scenario out, or have others test this scenario to make sure everything is ready to roll out.
Yeah, great additional features indeed for helping clients getting that scenario ready, but also indeed having others test the scenario, because obviously together you know more, you can create the best possible scenario out there, so you can kind of change a few things afterwards with the feedback you gather. So I can imagine that testing is actually a big part of this whole process. So then, after indeed testing, so writing, filming, testing, I think the scenario would be ready to roll out into your organization, right? Um, I guess people could have a few questions about that as well. So let's try to help them with kind of the rollout process. How do we get a ready VR training in the hands of 10, 100, maybe 1,000 employees? Like, how does that process go? So let's discuss that a little bit. Maybe we can give some examples from clients and some tips and tricks regarding rollouts. Let's say you have a scenario ready, you want to roll out. What is the most common way of playing VR trainings when we're looking at currently clients that are using our software for VR training?
Well, I think the first step that clients should take into consideration about rollout is which devices maybe will be used. And this usually depends on the impact you would like to achieve with these trainings, but also your budget. So VR headsets are currently 70% of the devices that are used for playing scenarios. And they are the best experience for these types of trainings because they really offer a real life experience, which is not the case with other devices. But they are also maybe more expensive choice and maybe more difficult for distribution. So therefore, you can also decide for smartphones, tablets, or playing on your browser with our web player, which is always easily accessible. Um, the next thing maybe you should decide is how you will pass the information to your trainees that there is a new VR training available.
I see. So how would that work? Like, what would be the best way? Let's say the way our clients are currently using to inform their employees about this VR training.
Yeah, I think most of our clients are using our LMS integration. So either through SCORM or LTI, they connect Warp Studio with their LMS, and then they do the distribution through their LMS. It's just so easy to use your own LMS to distribute these VR scenarios. The others just use Warp Studio because we have our own distribution system built into Warp Studio itself. So also there, it's very easy to inform the trainees that there is a new scenario ready for them to play. We also get all data back. Either it's always sent to Warp Studio, but it can also be sent back to the LMS.
Yeah, I can totally imagine that it's convenient, let's say, for training managers to have that data all in one place as well. So you don't have to, let's say, look into different systems, who did what training and how well they performed. The VR headsets are, obviously the most immersive experiences, and I can imagine that for these high impact scenarios that matters. Maybe the more guided tours type of trainings can very well be played on smartphones or indeed in the web browser. But let's say, as a company, I created this, high impact training, a story based training. So I want to use VR headsets. Can we share some tips and tricks on which VR headsets to buy? Which are the best devices, to use. Maybe also the quantity. Like, how does that work? Like, how do you start with this hardware, which is required for those immersive experiences?
Yeah, so I see the two brands that our customers pick are either Meta or Pico. With Meta, you have the Meta Quest 2 that can be used. Pico has several headsets. You have the Pico 4 Enterprise that can be used, but now just released also the G3. That's very interesting. So it's used in different ways for your headset, but most of the times, and I think almost every time, it's used as a shared device. So multiple users using the same VR headset to be trained. And we see that, different clients of ours use it in different ways. So maybe there is kind of a tool shop where employees already need to go to get some tools, and there they can also find VR headsets. Maybe there is a VR room that people are being trained in, so maybe in a more classroom setting, people get there, everything is already set up, and they get there. But we also know from our educational clients that they sometimes have a kind of yeah, cart in which they have all kinds of VR headsets that they can a classroom can hire such a cart, and then they just drive it in, and every student grabs a VR headset out of it, and they can play right away. So different ways.
I see. So there's already, a lot of examples and solutions out there to kind of, make it as easy as possible to start using, the VR headsets. What about installation or kiosk mode, for instance? We know that exists. That's probably easy to get started. So how would that work?
So we have an hardware partner, hardware resellers that can help with installation. So they can pre-install our application on the device. They can also help you with kiosk mode to enable it on these devices and then send it to you. So you get a ready-to-use VR headset delivered that can be used straight away.
Yeah, you can also maybe install a mobile device management solution or an MDM shortly. There are multiple on the market, such as Arbor XR. It's a great example, I believe. And they help to install and update apps with their latest versions, check the battery status of all of the devices or locate where the devices are. So I think it's a great solution when you have multiple devices.
Perfect. I see. So even using VR headsets nowadays is quite simple, I think, for employees for VR training. We discussed kind of the brands out there which are easy to use, also regarding installation or indeed mobile device management. And we discussed the fact that you can use on smartphone, but also in the browser to make it even easier and more scalable to play these training attempts. I think this kind of covers the rollout section as well. Maybe just as a quick recap on all the phases that we discussed. We started with starting VR training, like how do you start, which topics are best. We briefly discussed writing. We discussed the worksheets, the use of internal teams as a multidisciplinary team to do it together. Filming, there's cameras out there, but also the software, but also how Work Studio actually can help with connecting the writing to, the 360 video that you filmed. And finally, rollout, LMS, integration, mobile device management systems, and the type of VR headsets. Just the last question out there: did I miss anything? Like, is there anything we want to add to this? Maybe some tips and tricks, or how we can help whenever people still have questions.
Yeah, so if you need any help, we are always here. I think we have a great customer support and success team to help you out. And next to it, we also have some services that we deliver. So if you want us to help you with writing or filming, we have some different packages that we can offer. And also we offer a review session. So if you build your own scenario, but you want someone else to review it, to give you some tips and tricks on how to improve, then we can also help you there. So we have lots of experience in writing and filming. So don't hesitate if you need help.
Cool, thanks. Anna, anything to add?
I think we pretty much covered everything. If anybody has any additional questions, of course, you can always reach out to us, and we'll be there.
All right, Danny and Anna, thanks so much for this conversation. Really love discussing, all these examples of our current clients. And it shows that it doesn't need to be, complex to start with VR training. You can start simple. We discussed it. Doesn't need to be that complex, that difficult. Start small. That's kind of, I think, the most important point we discussed today. Thank you all for watching. We really hope we inspired you with these tips and tricks. In case you have any more questions about, starting, writing, filming rollouts, don't hesitate to contact us. Danny already mentioned it. Go to warpvr.com/contact and write us a note. We'll respond quickly. And we're thrilled, working with you, making your training programs more effective. Thank you, and see you at the next webinar.